Victron Energy solar components. Hi, this is Jim from RV4x40.com. Welcome to the channel today. We're glad you could join us. In the previous video, I covered some of the mistakes I had made over the years in solar systems and ended up with what we currently have. And this is not going to be an installation or how to do it kind of video. I do want to talk about the system and the components and some of the benefits of what we found using the Victron Energy various pieces that go with a solar system. In our case, because we already have a Magnum inverter and battery charger system, that is not part of what we did. We did not change that out to Victron. And what we did do, though, was get two Victron solar controllers, MPPT solar controllers, for the two different solar strings we have on the roof. And so they're wired that way. They're two independent channels, if you will, of power coming down off the roof. And they go into two separate controllers, which all hook into our 600 amp hours of battle-borne lithium batteries. So that all works quite well. We can get a lot of solar energy out of that. For a normal situation, just using the batteries to run the DC power overnight, that's no problem at all. It takes very little energy to do that. But what I want to cover is how we have the system configured and one of the options you have in terms of putting the Victron stuff together. And specifically, they sell various devices they have that will combine signals from their various components and provide you information about that. In addition to what you can get by individual components and their Bluetooth connections, this kind of consolidates everything into one place. Another feature that they have is they have a website that is free to use for people who buy their equipment. And that website will allow you to collect your information from your system and store it where it is readily available online, so you can look at the system and make certain configuration changes depending on what you want to do from anywhere in the world. So it makes it really nice as long as you have a mechanism for keeping that system online, which we do. Our system consists primarily of interfaces to the cellular data system or cellular network, and we have an ability to use AT&T, Verizon, or Sprint depending on how we have it configured. So pretty much anywhere we go, we've been able to get some kind of connectivity. Not 100% true in some of the western states, but mostly we have connectivity. So the significant thing about what we did was we use a Raspberry Pi device as opposed to buying one from Victron. This is a public service, if you will, from Victron. They would not have to make this software available, but they do, and it's free of charge. And so there's a small device called a Raspberry Pi, and this is a very economical, complete computer, CPU, memory, all kinds of interfaces, I/O ports, things like that, in what's about the size of a 3x5 index card. And these are very economical. They're in the neighborhood of $50, depending on which one you get and where you buy them. So for about $50, you can get one of these devices. And then you're going to take some other devices to actually make everything work. And we'll talk about that in a little bit of detail in the video. But what's nice is you can just simply download the software from Victron, and it will run on the Raspberry Pi. It runs pretty much as one of their devices. It's the same software, they say. Can't verify that one way or the other. So this week's video, we're going to go through some of the details of what the system can do, not from a how to do it standpoint, but just give you a feel for what the technology is. And there are lots of other videos on YouTube and other places you can find for information about how to do this if you're interested in doing this. So stay tuned. We'll go through the details and show you some of what you can get. Before I talk about the software and what you can do with that part of the system, I want just an overview of the hardware that's involved. This is mounted under the coach. You can see some of the beams up there at the top. The two blue boxes are the MPPT solar controllers that get the input from the two strings of solar panels on the roof. In the middle there, you will see a pair of circuit breakers. These are on the input side. We have an ability to turn off the power from the solar panels into the system down here. The sizing is such that it would be rare for these circuit breakers to actually be able to be tripped, because the current available from the solar panels isn't enough for the trip point of these circuit breakers, but they do provide some measure of safety there in the event something really weird happens. Mostly they're there to disconnect the input from the MPPT controllers. Not as visible, but there are two output circuit breakers as well, one for each of the controllers. And these are set at 60 amps, which is the capability of the solar controllers if they ever got that far. It protects the wiring and the solar controllers in case something goes wrong in the battery that might somehow damage them. And the other critical piece, which is really hard to see, is underneath the left solar controller there is a little box. That is a Raspberry Pi. You can get a feel for its size. The blue wire is the Ethernet connection coming in to hook that into our network. You can do it wirelessly, but I chose to do it via a wire. And there's a small box there, you can't see it very well, that provides 5-volt power. The Raspberry Pi takes a micro USB type of port for power into the box. So that's powered off of the 12-volt batteries through in effect, a cigarette lighter plug-in type of system to give us a USB charging cable. So this shows you the installation. It's buried underneath the coach. Hopefully never have to get back into it and never have to touch it, but the remote access gives us a lot of power, a lot of capability, and a lot of information about what's going on in the system. We're going to use screenshots from my cell phone as we look at the various things you can get on the Victron remote site and looking at a Victron system. This is the opening screenshot you will see when you first log in. It is a password protected site, so you'll have to set up an account on the site in order to be able to use it, but after that it's pretty straightforward just to log in. This is the initial thing you're going to see, and the graphic there is the Victron remote access device that you would buy from them that would run the same set of software with the same features as what the Raspberry Pi is going to give you. If you look at the device list, in our case we have 3 devices that are on the network. There are 2 solar controllers and then the battery shunt, which monitors what's going on with the battery in terms of current in and current out. This is a status screen of the actual system. And what's interesting is that the Victron page is going to default to assuming there is a Victron inverter of some kind involved in the system, typically an inverter battery charger. And so the top section is really related to their inverter, and since we're using a Magnum inverter, that information is basically not there. It's possible to actually take the data from the Magnum bus and transliterate that into the format that Victron would like, and could actually put that data in there. But so far that's way down the road and way down the list of priorities, because it's just not all that essential. What you do see is the amount of energy coming from the solar panel, in this case 2 panels that are both providing information, as well as what's going into the battery, and the difference of the two must be going into the DC loads. And you also see the state of charge of the battery. There we were at 93% totally charged when this was taken. This is another status page which just shows you what the battery is doing, the voltage where it's being charged, as well as the state of charge that it currently has. One of the features, again, is historical data you can pull up. This happens to be a view for today. And as you can see, early on there was no solar on because the sun wasn't up yet. And so the battery is providing energy into the coach at that point. And then as the sun comes up, you can see the solar levels start to go up, and then it's going to go back down once the batteries start to achieve a state of charge. This shot is simply scrolling down the page so you can see the summary information in terms of kilowatt hours. Of course, the grid is not connected, and so we're not doing anything to or from the grid. And so you can see the production from the solar panels so far today, as well as the consumption from the battery. So we're down a little bit net. This is another way to look at historical data, which shows you how much is coming from the solar, how much is being used by the system. These next 2 screenshots are simply going to show you the production from each of the 2 panels. As you can see, they're pretty much the same point in terms of what they're providing energy-wise. They are balanced through the system. And those are the details of what's going on from our 2 solar panels. And through the interface, it is possible to go into the settings for the various devices in your system, and you can manipulate those remotely. If there would some reason you wanted to actually change those once they're set, they typically are not going to need to be changed, but you could review them remotely if that was your desire. And this last screenshot simply shows the settings for the solar controller. You can manipulate these remotely if that would be your desire. Once they're set up, it should not be required to actually change those very often, but you can review them if you want to, or change them if there's some reason to tweak them from anywhere in the world where you have internet access. And that wraps up our look at what you can do with the Victron remote management system through a Raspberry Pi as opposed to one of their devices. It works just as well as far as I can tell. And so it is a way to go, save yourself a little bit of money and give you a lot of flexibility if you like to drill down into the nitty-gritty of microcomputers and some things like that to get everything set up. This is a look at our Victron system and the major components that they supply, the two solar controllers and then the shunt that measures the current into and out of the battery, so you get a status report on that from what the real-time charge state of your battery is. And that's really the only way you can tell what the charge is in your battery system is a system like that. There are other brands out there, other manufacturers, but the Victron one is quite nice. And so hopefully you've gained some information about this. One of the things that we do is we have another website which posts some of our pictures. We do a lot of photography work, a lot of landscape type of things, and so I'll post a link down below if you'd like to support the channel and are looking for an interesting picture. Go over to that website, and if you find something you like, click on that and you can buy it right there, either as a print or as a downloaded JPEG file to make your own prints. So we appreciate any support you can give to us. It does help defray some of our costs for living and for producing this channel. In the meantime, we hope you have a great week and you have a good time traveling the highways and byways of America. And if we see you around somewhere, be sure to stop by and say hello.